In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'm going to tell you why Brandon Ingram dominating training camp is a really big deal, especially now that that news is overshadowed by an injury to Trey Murphy III. I'll tell you how much time he's expected to miss and what the Pelicans do going forward. It's the Friday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with you on this Friday, and we're getting off to a rough start for training camp with the New Orleans Pelicans. Things seem good, and then injuries crept up. Trey Murphy III suffering a right hamstring injury. I'll tell you how long he's going to be out for, what this might look like, and how it impacts the team. Then we're going to get into Brandon Ingram dominating training camp, which, by the way, is even more important with that Trey injury, especially the way Ingram's playing. I'll tell you what he's doing differently. And then we're going to get into the new Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network updates that the Pelicans released. This is exciting. So a lot to cover here in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. That means you listen to Locked On Pelicans Monday through Friday. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. I see y'all. So today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So let's get into the big news of the day that kind of overshadows everything. And it just feels like the same old story with the New Orleans Pelicans, doesn't it? And especially because this happened last year, though not nearly as bad. The Pelicans sent out the press release. The New Orleans Pelicans announced today that forward Trey Murphy III has been diagnosed with a right hamstring strain. An MRI taken today confirmed the injury, which occurred during yesterday evening's practice. He will be re-examined in approximately 3 weeks. Oh boy, the last words we want to hear are re-examined or re-evaluated because we've got some history with that. We'll touch on that here in a second. So this basically, if you go off of 3 weeks, reevaluated in 3 weeks, does not mean cleared to play in 3 weeks. It means he'll get another MRI done, they'll do some tests, and they'll see if he's ready to go. And with hamstring injuries, they are particularly tricky. You really can't do much. The body's just got to heal. So this keeps him out of all of training camp and preseason, and 3 weeks is basically the start of the regular season. Just past that, they'll play their first game on October 23rd. This injury happened on the 2nd, confirmed on the 3rd. That's not great. Basically, what this means is it's more likely than not that Trey Murphy III misses the start of the NBA's regular season. This happened to him last year with the torn meniscus. Not an ideal situation then either, but obviously this is better. Now, the problem comes with that word revisited, reevaluated. We've seen this with Brandon Ingram. We've seen this with other players. Reevaluated in 2 to 4 weeks is usually like double that timeline with this team. That doesn't mean it's wrong or they're hiding anything. It's just usually you get reevaluated, then there's a ramp up period after that. Especially with a hamstring injury being one you can't do a ton on. Can you do cardio? Can you stay in game shape? Do you just kind of have to sit and rest? It's not an ideal situation for New Orleans because Trey Murphy was someone we were maybe putting in as a starter or being that super sub off the bench. And he was going to play a very key, important role for the New Orleans Pelicans this season. And now, not the case, at least on opening night. This does somewhat solve the question of who starts. We've wanted to see Trey Murphy in the starting lineup with the three-point shooting that he brings to this team. One of the betters, if not the best three-point shooters on this team. Now he's not. This definitely means that CJ McCollum, is absolutely going to be a starter on opening night. your starters at this point now, maybe this forces them into more of a Daniel Tice kind of play where you have DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and maybe Herb Jones or Daniel Tice in there if you put CJ on the bench. This at least means CJ is probably starting because I'm starting to believe they're going to start a small ball lineup. We will see though. Trey was instrumental last year for this Pelicans team, as a starter and off the bench. He missed the beginning of the season, but finished the year pretty strong. 8 3-point attempts per game at 38%. And if you look at his stats over the season, he was getting good by the end of the regular season. He came back in December, so missed the first month and a half, about 2 months of the season, put up 14.8 points per game, and then dipped a little bit, but as things started to get better and better and better for him, he wasn't playing back-to-backs, things like that. January goes from 11 points per game to 12.3 in February. March, when he's in game shape, healthy, 17.1, and then 8 games in April in the regular season, 19.6 points per game. Some of those coming as a starter while Brandon Ingram was out. That's really good. You want to see that kind of natural progression, guys, peaking at the end of the regular season. You also want them to be ready for the start of the regular season. We've seen that with Zion Williamson not be the case. He gets better as it goes. We want to see him ready to go at the beginning of this year. Trey is going to probably have to go through a somewhat similar progression to what he did last year so that when he comes back and is playing, which hopefully is going to be around November 1, let's say, maybe that's kind of what we're looking at. So he misses a week, 2 weeks kind of max, hopefully. With the regular season, he's going to need that ramp up period a little bit to get in game shape, to get in the flow of things. It's not great. The Pelicans have a middle of the road start to the season in terms of schedule. There's some road games, things like that, which allow Trey maybe not to travel, but stay here in New Orleans and rehab the injury a little bit. That can be a very good thing, not, wasting time, losing time when you're traveling. But you'd like to see this team just be fully ready to go on opening night. They're not going to be able to do that anymore. So this is disappointing news. I'm glad it's not going to require surgery. I'm glad that it's not that type of injury, but we also have some unfortunate luck here with hamstrings in general in New Orleans with a player like Zion Williamson missing almost, the majority of the season 2 years ago because of that hamstring strain that he suffered against the Philadelphia 76ers on was that New Year's Eve. So this is not ideal for the team at all. Hamstrings can be tricky, but given that we'll see what happens in 3 weeks. And then maybe we start to panic depending on how that goes. But 3 weeks does not just mean 3 weeks and then you're back. It's going to be longer than that. This is revisited, reevaluated in 3 weeks. We'll get updates around then when it comes to Trey Murphy. But this does solve part of the starting unit question for now, at the very least. But it sucks for Trey, who's now missing the start of consecutive seasons when we were hoping for a really big year from him. So there is good news coming out of training camp. And that was the quote from Willie Green saying, Brandon Ingram is dominating. And we also have some updates from what we see in a practice and me talking to a couple of people around the team. Ingram looks good. And that's even more important now with the way that he is playing with this Trey Murphy injury. Those 3-point shots need to come from somewhere. You need that court spacing for this team. Well, that's going to be a lot on Brandon Ingram now. Let's talk about that and why it's so important and how he's already doing it, which is what we want to hear. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by my go-to ticketing app, Game Time. Game Time just makes buying tickets easy. I love all the different features they have that can make it simpler for you to get to the live events, sporting events, concerts, theater, whatever it is, comedy that you're looking for. Game Time has it, and they make it easy. Game Time even has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Just get the best deals out there. I love the all-in pricing that when you toggle this and turn it on up front, you're going to see no surprise fees at checkout at all. They also have great last-minute deals. Sometimes those prices go down the closer you get to an event. You're already out on a Friday night, you're a little bit bored. Open up the Game Time app, see what you can score a great deal on, and all of a sudden you're having an awesome evening. And one of my favorite features is the seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. Again, we're the #1 Pelicans podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Listen Monday through Friday. If you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Now, for your second listen today, Locked On NBA. With the season starting, you're not necessarily watching every game. Locked On NBA is going to cover them all, every single day. They're going to have the recaps you want. I'll still be on there every single week, breaking down the biggest stories in the association. Locked On NBA, your one-stop shop for everything you want to know about the NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So that Trey Murphy injury is not great for New Orleans. For someone who is one of their two high-volume three-point shooters, it's Trey Murphy and CJ McCollum. CJ, very underrated last season. He was awesome from three. 8.4 attempts per game at 43% is incredible. Putting him in the starting lineup next to Zion Williamson is totally a good thing for the shooting. Don't have the size, the rebounding, but the shooting is there, and that is an absolutely great thing to see. But you need more shooting. It's Zion Williamson. You've got to have shooters out there because they're going to get wide open looks from three. This has been the big sticking point with Brandon Ingram. It's really tough to field a competitive offense if your two main guys, your two high usage guys, Ingram and Zion, don't shoot threes. Zion said he's going to shoot more threes this year, but he's never going to be an elite shooter that does it on volume, a la CJ, a la Trey. Ingram can be, and he has done that in the past, and he's gone away from it because he just feels safety with that mid-range jumper. And those are open, but they're also open because that's partially what the defenses are giving you, and you don't want to play into their hands. The Pelicans ranked 24th last season in terms of three-point attempts at just 32.6 per game. If Ingram were to take more, that number would really jump up, and that would change kind of the paradigm for the New Orleans Pelicans offense, and that would be a really, really important thing for this team. So now, with Ingram knowing that, and knowing that you can't rely on Trey for those threes, you go up against a team like the Warriors, the Celtics that shoot a lot of threes, you need to take threes because, look, it can be a math thing. You can make all the twos you want. If they're making threes, those are worth an extra point. They're worth an extra point. You'll just never catch up in a game that you're behind, or they'll just pull ahead. So Ingram taking more threes is an important thing. And guess what? From what I've been told, from what he's been doing at training camp, that is fitting right on in. He is only, in their first scrimmage they had, he only took shot attempts from three and at the rim. Nothing in the mid-range. If you go on Twitter, I'll retweet it. There's a graphic going around showing you just why you don't want to take tons and tons of mid-range shots. Some are fine, but you don't even want to take those paint mid-rangers. You either want to be in the restricted area or from three. That's how you win in today's NBA, is your shot selection. Ingram kind of getting to that more efficient shot profile. This is the type of play that gets him back to being an all-star level guy. You do that, make a ton of threes, be aggressive, go to the rim, get to the free throw line more. With the assists that he has, he's a very good facilitator, an underrated passer. He can be a decent rebounder. He gave more of an effort on the defensive side of the ball than we'd ever seen from him before. This is how he gets back into the All-Star game. The Pelicans can send two to the All-Star game. They can send Ingram and they can send Zion Williamson. And with Ingram just playing smarter, more efficient, fitting in a little bit better like that, it's going to go a long way towards earning him the money that he wants in free agency, whether it's the Pelicans or elsewhere, and helping this team win and having the postseason success that we are craving for here in New Orleans. Willie Green said in Thursday's media availability after their practices here on Brandon Ingram, it's, quote, "He's not just fitting in, he's dominating. It's really refreshing to come to camp and play at a high level, high speed. He's focused on getting to the rim more, making threes. He'll still have his mid-range game because he's elite in those positions, but overall his leadership and his spirit has been really good, end quote. I told you after media day that, seeing kind of the vibe around the team, that I wasn't really worried about Brandon Ingram making a mess of this. A lot of people watched media day and they clearly don't know Brandon Ingram or don't pay enough attention to him because that's his usual demeanor, his usual persona. It just feels low energy, even if it's not actually low energy. He's not a high animated guy like I'm doing on the show right now. That's him. I wasn't worried about him coming in and sulking or anything like that. And I told you that on this show. That's just not who he is or how he plays. And he's not doing that. He's doing his best to buy into what this team needs. That's important. That is really important. There's no need to send him away from the team because you're worried it's going to distract from chemistry or the locker room culture or anything like that. He's fitting right in. He knows what he needs to do. The big question was, will he have the self-awareness to do it, to make those changes, to look in the mirror and have like a hard conversation with yourself? And that social media post that he put out over the summer didn't do anything to make us feel good about that. His end of season media availability before that did, and I've spoken about that for the everydayers here a lot. So this isn't necessarily a surprise to y'all. He said a lot of the right things at media day. After that first practice when he was speaking, he was saying, like, I know I need to shoot more threes. That's going to be an important thing. I'm going to try. This is him challenging himself. This is Brandon Ingram getting out of his comfort zone and doing this. That should be applauded. That's what this team needs, and it's great to see him really doing that. This is getting me very hyped for Brandon Ingram, and I don't want to call it a breakout year. He's one most improved player in the NBA one season, but somewhat of a breakout year or a different Brandon Ingram. We talk a lot about Zion Williamson 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, whatever 0.0 we're on with Zion now. If Ingram goes to just taking the majority of shots at the rim and from three, it's like a Brandon Ingram 2.0, which that dude, being that talented of a scorer with the length that he has, the skill that he has, particularly with the passing too, it should put the league on notice and terrify opponents. All of a sudden now, if he's playing like that, this Pelicans offense becomes a nightmare for opponents to deal with. An elite rim attacking Brandon Ingram that's shooting threes. Zion Williamson, DeJounte Murray, shooters kind of in Herb, definitely in CJ, definitely in Trey when he's healthy. This is really a very good offense, particularly if they're playing small and they're forcing opponents to react to them rather than being reactive and on the back foot compared to their opponents. They can really throw a lot of different looks at teams right now, and everyone on the court is a dribble, pass, shoot guy. They can do it in all facets of the game offensively. The defense is going to be there. I believe this because that's what this team has proven under Willie Green for the past couple of seasons. Now, all of a sudden, you get an efficient Brandon Ingram making the most of every possession as a team. Oh, hell yeah. Sign me up for that. That's what I want to see, and I'm pretty excited about that. Now, this is all in training camp. It'll be in preseason too. It'll be different when it's a close game, and we talked about the clutch issues for the team yesterday. If you didn't listen to that, you definitely want to. Murray's going to help with that, but if someone won't pass the ball, if someone reverts to bad habits, bad form, whether it's Brandon Ingram or anyone else, that's going to make things fall apart. So it's all great right now, but when there is some adversity, when a game gets tough, when maybe foul calls aren't going your way, do you revert to who you were previously or do you continue this new form going forward? That's what we're going to wait to see and have to find out when we get into those type of games in the regular season. But this is certainly an encouraging sign. And this is what we want to see all season long. I would have led with this in the show. The first segment of every show, I try and lead with like, what's the most important thing? If you only listen to one thing in today's episode, what is it? And I wanted it to be this. The injury overshadows that because injury news is always big and important. And then this takes even more of an importance with that injury. You need to make up those 8 threes per game that Trey was taking. I think you'll see a lot of minutes for Javonte Green. He'll take some of those shots. But it's better if Brandon Ingram does. And now he's in position where not only can he do it, but the team needs him even more so than they already did. And it sounds like he's already buying in. That's a really great thing to see. Pelican stock maybe going up a little bit here. So coming up next, the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network launched yesterday. I have it on my TV right now. You can watch it. We'll give you some updates, familiar faces on there, new faces, but also familiar faces. This is pretty exciting. I'll break down how you're going to be able to watch Pelicans games. It's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. NBA fans, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. It doesn't have to be on NFL action this weekend. You can do it for the NBA futures. Zion Williamson for MVP. DeJounte Murray for most clutch player. CJ McCollum, now he's starting, but 6th man of the year odds could be good. Trey Murphy for 6th man of the year. Herb Jones for defensive player of the year. The NBA futures are all there. You want the lines? Pelicans -6.5 over the Chicago Bulls. You can go put $5 down on that right now, and then you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. And you can do that over at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast coming to you like nobody else does. Those things we were saying about Brandon Ingram buying in all off season until the snafu with social media. I was saying here first, we know what's going on with the team. I was telling you, don't worry about his demeanor at media day. Clearly, you didn't need to worry about that. We also have some exclusive interviews that no one else got, including David Griffin. You want to listen to that one for sure, as he shed some really great insight into the team here as well. So subscribe. Those are on YouTube. I'll probably post some of those to just the audio side if you're a podcast listener over the weekend as well. Now for your second listen, Locked On Saints. Are they trading for Devontae Adams? I hope they are. Ross Jackson of the Locked On Saints podcast is going to tell you why they will or won't do it and what to expect. He's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So how are you going to watch Pelicans games this season? I'm going to give you kind of what you need to know here. We've done a show or two on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, and it is now live. I have an antenna on I don't have cable. I don't have any of those services. I have, like Netflix and those things, but I don't have like DirecTV Cox. I don't have a cable package. I don't get live TV. I don't have Hulu with live TV or any of those. I watch a lot of the Saints games on the antenna over the air. Simple as that. My antenna's hooked up to the back of the TV. It cost me $10. You can get them anywhere. It's real easy. You just plug it in and you do one or two buttons on your TV. You can figure out how to do it. I didn't need to update anything or do anything. 7.1 just popped up and it wasn't there the other day. So it is right there live right now, the home of where you're going to watch Pelicans games if you're in the region. For those of you in Lafayette, they're working on something. That's all I can tell you right now. They are working on getting the games there, finding a partner. Simple as that. Will they get it by the start of the regular season? I hope so, but I can't tell you. But you're not forgotten about. They're aware that there's a gap there. There's reasons for that. We don't need to get into all of the specifics. They are working on a fix. It's, from what I understand, maybe expected that you will be able to get the games there. But the channel is live, and I think that's a really exciting thing for this team. They have a chance to reach more folks. They have a chance to reach a larger audience, maybe create some new Pelicans fans when it comes to that. So this is an exciting time. And as we were talking about here, they're listening to you. They want your feedback as this goes on. There's a lot of probably filler content on there right now as they start to ramp up and get things up and going. This is a big undertaking. It's not going to be perfect on day one, but the coverage is going to be great from what it sounds like. Joel Myers, Antonio Daniels are back. They're going to still be here with the team. That's not changing. But what is new is Andrew Lopez formerly of the Times-Picayune, formerly of ESPN, friend of the show, friend of mine here, is joining the television broadcast as the team sideline reporter. That's really great. This dude's a New Orleans native who knows everything about the city, loves basketball. Covering the Pelicans was his dream job. There's like an untold story of how he and I almost had a podcast together, by the way. But he's going to be great on there, I think, as well. They're changing the way the pre-halftime and post-game shows work, too. Now that they're no longer with Bally Sports, they're bringing this all in-house. They're doing their thing. Erin Summers, also a friend of the show, she'll be on the show regularly this season, is going to be hosting the pre-game, halftime, and post-game studio shows alongside analyst Wesley Johnson, who played one season here in New Orleans. Erin's been there for a while, so that's really great. So I'm excited to see this new show that's going to kind of be focused more on the Pelicans. You just get local experts, right? Like that's the Locked On thing. Local experts covering the team. That's what you want. That's what you're getting now in the pregame, halftime, and postgame studio shows. Jen Hale, formerly the sideline reporter, is going to be a host and producer on programming and content for the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. That, I think, is going to be really great as well. She knows this team. She's really good at what she does. She works as hard as anybody out there. Having her as a producer and involved is also going to be an awesome thing. What I'm also excited about is if you can't watch the games on TV, don't forget they're switching to WWL radio. Is going to be the official home of the New Orleans Pelicans. They're going to play all of the games over the station's airwaves. That's got a really wide reach. It'll either be on their AM or FM station. So there you go. The network's also going to have other content. There's going to be more shows. There's going to be regional. So if you're in Birmingham, you're going to get Birmingham-based stuff. If you're in Montgomery, it'll be Montgomery. If you're in Baton Rouge, you'll get Baton Rouge-based content too. It won't be like New Orleans high school football everywhere else. We won't be getting here. Those of us here in New Orleans won't be getting, content from other markets too. They are also working on streaming games. There is going to be an app-based service here. I don't have the cost, the pricing. It'll be less, from what I've been told, than what Bally Sports Plus was. They've partnered with a cloud-based video company to stream the games direct to consumer. I think there'll be more of that in the future. So those are the changes. I'm excited for that. I know there's going to be a lot of new and really great content out there on the channel. It's live now. Go get an antenna, plug it in. If you have DirecTV, Cox, any of the things like that, I don't believe this channel is going to be on there. It could be in the future. I don't know if it will be, though, for sure. That is between that like cable provider and Gray Media. If use Hulu with live TV as an example, wants to pick this channel up, they've got to negotiate with Gray. That has nothing to do with the Pelicans other than them saying like, yeah, we'd like you to do that. But that's between those two organizations. As far as I know, there's nothing in place with that right now. It could change in the future. So those are kind of the options right now. If you have one of those services, go buy an antenna and you'll be able to get games. If you're in one of the markets, in one of the regions, it's really that simple. In terms of DVR, certain TVs can do that even with your antennas. So depends on the TV you have. It's a bit of a change. It might take some getting used to with it, but it's going to be pretty exciting that all of this is just more available than it's, really been ever before. So that's a really great thing, I think. So that's going to be pretty awesome. And there's always the Pelicans app, which you can use for exclusive content 365 days a year. But you can also just come to Locked On Pelicans for everything you need, as we're covering everything you want to know about the team. Monday through Friday, the tagline of Locked On is your team every day. So we've been doing it here. I'm going to have a lot of new content for you. There's something launching in about 2 weeks that's going to be new. You see me do a lot of like the clips of the shows, things like that. I got a lot of freedom here. So we're going to have a lot of fun here on Locked On Pelicans this season with more content than you've ever had. So we got you covered as well. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000. That's an incredible number. Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And that's going to do it. We got a game on Monday. We'll preview what we want to see in preseason. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to be in the Smoothie King Center, just watching actual basketball. It's going to be an awesome time. This has been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all on Monday for real live basketball. See you then.